Kool FM. Good day to you, it is Monaghan. And I had a very special show. I've been looking forward to this one for such a long time.
Everything will soon be okay.
Kicking up with the Gladiators.
Soon as the war.
Vincent Farron.
The children will be free.
So today, I'm joined in the studio. I'm very, very fortunate to be joined by Calibre. Dom, thanks so much for coming in, man.
My pleasure.
Thanks, man. So I will echo this out so we can focus on yourself. So what I want to do is I want to just say thank you because you've just come straight off a plane.
Yeah.
From Berlin, and for just paint a picture for fans that may or may not know. You obviously reside in Germany. I mean, how long have you been over in Berlin or Germany?
I lived in Berlin now for 3 years. I moved there just as COVID kicked in, and I lived in Cologne for about 3 years before that, and we found it really difficult to get an apartment there because I'm a musician.
And, making lots of noise.
Yeah, and fortunately somebody had an apartment in Berlin, told us about it, and we made the decision to try and take our chances in Berlin. So here I am 3 years later.
Nice, there we go. I want to really go back to just to sort of paint the picture really, and the musical journey, and I believe that you started playing piano from really young. You were got picked out to do pitch tests and things like this from school, and you're a very musical family, and we touched previously just before we'd even started the interview, and you've got cousins that sang on famous adverts, and I mean, for you, was music coming from Belfast? I mean, was music escapism? Is it something you just naturally took up? I mean, what's the story of why you decided to start effectively producing, which I know is a loaded question, but
I think very early on I had either an artistic career to follow or musical. My family, actually, my close family, were not musical, and it was a bit of an anomaly, really. My mum, her mother had bought her a piano, and she'd wanted her to have a music career, and I don't think she really could deal with piano. Now, I can't really play the piano, but I like the sound of things. So very early on, I was playing the piano in my nana's place in Belfast, and then very early on in school, of course, the pitch tests came along, and I got chosen to go to School of Music, where I tried to play the violin, and didn't really like academic music stuff, so it put me off it. And then when I was in secondary school, I had a chance to play violin in an Irish folk band as part of the school, and so I did that for a few years until bringing the violin into school seemed to be a little bit too dangerous. So I stopped the violin, and then a few years passed, and I guess I was already into UB40 and specials and ska music and music that had some politics to it, which I think in the 80s there was a lot of music like that entered into the mainstream, and artists seemed to have messages, and they seemed to have things that they wanted to comment on, and I think it was a rich period for people being a bit more honest artistically, and I was drawn to the sort of politics and the rebellion of punk rock and reggae and independent music, so that's the start for me.
I think also, I mean, at the time you had like Peter Tosh, and you had so much. I think it was the sort of the 80s was the period of rebel music, and obviously Bob Marley's, etc. And it was, you went from sort of ska and Mento and ska and rocksteady, and you kind of worked your way through. And I mean, rebel music. I mean, obviously Belfast at the time when all that was popping off. I mean, was that the cause? Did you really get into reggae because that really resonated with you, even though the world's apart, Jamaica and Ireland? I mean, did you was it the same kind of governmental lyrics and things like this? Does that resonate?
So sometimes I think things like Pigeon Street, was it Pigeon Street? And UB40 had done the soundtrack. So when I was a kid, I just gravitated towards reggae. I just really loved it. And when I was in school, the guys I went to school with, I guess, were some of them, their fathers were related to the IRA and stuff like this. So it interested me a little bit, like the angle that one day I could see them outside with a ghetto blaster playing music, and I thought, what are these guys listening to? And it was UB40, and I liked that too. And I asked them about it, like, why are you listening to UB40? And they told me they liked the fact that UB40 mentioned Northern Ireland in the lyrics, and I thought to myself, this is interesting, because obviously I come from a musical angle. I just loved the bass stuff. So whenever they said that, it resonated with me, and there's lots to get angry about in that period of time, and it just made connections with me. Any music where people were talking about things and, you know, trying to illuminate situations, I was really attracted to that, because I was in a place that I felt needed illuminated itself, you know.
But when you were starting to sort of make more drum and bass kind of, I mean, I love the story. I think it was you managed to get a tape to Bookham. I think Bookham was playing in Ireland, and you know, some people may know the story. I just wanted to kind of touch on that before we go down that sort of sound system route. I don't suppose you mind just telling that story about how Bookham was playing and you managed to get over a tape.
Yeah, he I think, I'm not so sure. I think I gave him a tape when he came, and he then called my parents. And I came back. I was just out with my mate, and I came back one afternoon, and my mum told me some LTJ Bookham on the phone, and I thought, wow, and it felt like a door had opened. But prior to that, I'd already given music to David Holmes, who ran Sugar Sweet and Shake Your Brain in Belfast, and like that was my first sort of, because I would make music not with computers. I would do it with an 8-track, and then I would have a drum machine, and I would play the keyboards for like the 5-6 minutes that the tune went. So I learned about how to make arrangements and improvise arrangements that, you know, people would never do that today. But I didn't really have anything to use, so I cobbled together stuff, and even used cardboard boxes and anything I could use for rhythm. And so I was very organic in how I just had this, I wanted to make this thing. I don't care how I make it, I just wanted to do it, you know. And that's how I started. It was any type of music, I didn't know what it was at that stage. And then whenever I heard Terminator by Goldie,
yeah,
I think that was just because it sounded very like just alien to me, and originally I didn't like it, but we had a little fun and then pushed it a little further, and then, oh, okay, we get it. So then after that, I you know, I had this real interest in it because I'm a drummer as well, so I got this natural, you know, connection with the drum and bass then at that stage. Nice.
And then debut album came out on Creative Source.
Yeah,
it's Fabio, and I love Fabio. We get on, and I've met Fabio at the old Rinse Studios, and he's a massive lover of reggae and dub, and he's always spoke very highly of you. And there's always the famous interview you guys at Sun and Bass talking about Marcus and things like that. I mean, I in preparation for this, and as a fan anyway, I've kind of started on Spotify right at the bottom of the albums and started to try and identify myself, like from the first album, your sort of production, and see how it develops over time. I tried to make that assessment, and I think it really changed for me at like Jabraro, like how your influence went, and then the sort of, you were making kind of like 140 from, and this kind of 140, the experimental stuff quite early on. So I guess the sort of the question is, did you want to go down did you want to be a drum and bass DJ? I mean, because we look at your Shelf Life projects now, and they span across jazz and all kinds of different types. I mean, was that what you intentionally inspired to be?
Yeah, I never had any thoughts for tomorrow about it. I just would just have a real feeling, just do it, and I think because I didn't have, like, I wasn't buried with it, you know, like I didn't have it all around me, the culture. So it allows me to sort of be sort of on the outside of it, but yet still, you know, contribute to it. And from when you come from Belfast, it felt like quite stigmatized or something. It was really house and techno there, and I think that's something that made me feel like more determined in a way to champion it and to cherish it. And I think it's something as well, like if you're doing something artistic and somebody like Fabio shows an interest in it, then it's hard like to turn away from it. But I had just a lot of energy for the music, and 25 years later I still love going in and rolling the tune out. It's great.
Wasn't it? I can't remember the link. Was it U2's label?
Yeah, U2 ran a label in Dublin. They ran it out in the kitchen actually, which is underneath the Clarence Hotel in Dublin. I'm not so sure. That could be wrong on that. So I actually met Bono, and I was quite happy because he was shorter than me. But I met Bono there and a few other famous people there, and I think I was very very young at that stage, and I had no idea what was going on around me. I was just sort of happy to see such a place and be involved in it, and that's where my releasing career started, was from the Dublin label Quadraphonic.
I mean, obviously, the creativity is immense. I mean, I know you're an avid painter. I mean, when did you start? Have you always been drawing and sketching? I mean, when did the painting start?
That's something I've been doing since I was a kid, and I think I've always recognised that when I do something creative, it makes me feel better. So whether it be painting or drawing or DJing or making music, it's all the same thing for me. So it's just a different thing to do, but it's the same feeling,
Because I know you're going on tour with you're doing like a co-tour in Australia shortly with Goldie.
Yeah.
And I mean, Goldie's got his galleries and things like that. I mean, do you guys ever literally thrash out conversations about? Because he's a big painter and he's got some amazing works and stuff. I mean, is that something you guys talk about, or?
I don't know whether I've talked to him too much about that. No. I've always felt like the art was something that would take a long time for me to develop and be happy with, and even now I still feel like I'm sketching towards it. So it's like a long-term plan for me, that it's not so much for revenue but for psychological redress as I get older, and gives me something to pour into, because you can't expect your body to stay the same, and making music and having your senses about you, it's important, so all these things they're just creative outlets for me, and I think it's just really important. I see it like my medicine.
Nice. I think like it's so powerful, isn't it? And just to be able to have an outlet, an organic outlet as well.
Yeah.
And so some quick fires. Right. So Harry Bradley, flute player.
Yeah.
Did you ever get a collaboration?
Yeah, I met Harry. I hadn't seen Harry for many years. Harry Bradley is one of the most highly rated flute players in Ireland, and he was a very close friend of mine in primary school. And then I went to a secondary school, and he went to a mixed school called Loudon College. But he pardon me, he was a really interesting character for me, and I didn't realise what he'd done, for many years. And then I went and looked him up, and there he was, this fantastic flute player. But I met him recently, and he said to me he was tired chasing glory, and I felt, hey man, come on. So maybe at some stage in the future, this is something I want to do. I want to have Harry involved at some stage. So if he was ever listening, or somebody knows Harry, it's something I'm going to do. I think when I go back to Belfast and Ireland, I have ideas about what I want to do with it. But I think Irish music, because I've played there, it's hard to extract it. I think there's a few bands out there that do it. I think there's a band from Belfast called Lancome.
Okay.
That got this great psychedelic, sort of Irish type of thing going on. And I think that's where I would go as well, but not to go too far like Enya or something like that. But
yeah,
it'd be nice to see what you could do with Irish folk music.
How often do you get? I mean, again, you're living in Germany. You've lived there for a long time, and you play all around the world. I mean, how often do you manage to sort of ping between, Northern Ireland and see family? And I mean, how much music do you actually do on the road, and how much is just in your studio at home?
I don't like working on the road. I have done it before, but I don't really like it. I'm lucky in that whenever I I write, it comes pretty easy for me, and I guess I can, every time I go in the studio, I feel like something's gonna happen, so it's always there. So I don't suffer writer's block all these years. It's always just there, like a tap. I turn it on and it comes out. So I don't really feel like I need to put pressure on myself for it.
And then I think your output is so impressive, whether it's painting and shelf life and projects. And I mean, was it Sump that came out the other day, I think, on Spotify, and I'd originally heard that track in like 2017, I think, on a Beats One mix. Yeah. So I mean, I'm sure you get us all the time. But I mean, how much music are you actually sat on? I mean, how much stuff is on the hard drive that's just probably never going to see the light of day?
I'd say probably around 1,000.
1,000?
Maybe 1,000.
And what does it take for you to go? I mean, the beauty of Shelf Life is that you curate it to a T. I mean, what does a track have to do to get on the actual release project?
This thing with music that always it fascinates me, like how music works in an instant or how it works over time. And when you make a lot of music, it's hard to test it, and sometimes it's hard to be objective about it when you've got a whole load of it. So it just takes a bit of time, and sometimes tunes hit different in different situations. So something that just felt like nothing can be, oh hey, hang on, this is doing something pretty interesting. So I don't get too precious about it, because I always feel like for DJing, it's like I like to be able to blend. So it's cool for me just to have a basic rhythm with a feeling and then blend it. So I have no like strict approach to it. So I'm quite happy making something that's quite lax and needs a lot of attention. And I'm also quite happy doing something that's very detailed and complex, you know. So all these things are all good, man. I like to have the immediacy of just being cool with something and not caring too much, if that makes any sense.
And we'll move into the reggae sound system side of things now. And Good Vibrations Records.
Hi, Terry Hurley.
Yeah.
So yeah, Terry Hurley, he's quite famous in Northern Ireland for signing the Undertones. So Terry Hurley is like, he's a very famous guy. He's sort of one of the original punks. But he's a very fantastic character, and if you've seen the film, I guess it comes close, although it doesn't have my dad in it. I think my father should have played a role, but he didn't want anything to do with it. But my dad used to drive him around and was a fairly close friend during that sort of late 60s and 70s period. I mean, I used to go down to Terry's because my dad would say, hey, go down and say to Terry and tell him who you are, and he'll give you some money off the record. So I would go there, get secondhand punk and metal and indie, whatever I could get my hands on. And I think it was about around then I'm starting to buy reggae as well, and soul music and jazz, and started to become a bit more sophisticated. So Terry Hurley's shop was fairly instrumental. It was then replaced by a shop called Backbeat, run by a friend of mine called Paddy, who also moved to Berlin as well. But those two shops that was on Great Victoria Street in Belfast, and it was a pretty solid thing for me for many years, because I would go there and get secondhand records there. Yeah. I
mean, I grew up on going to. I'm from a little village in the middle of nowhere, actually between Nottingham and Derby. And growing up, I was getting dragged to go to like these scooter rallies. So I was every weekend. You finish school and then you get whisked off, and then next thing you know, you're in a Northern Soul rave with skinheads, mods, punks, and it was like 11 years old. I'm stood there listening to like Sham 69 and King Kurt and all this mental stuff, and like I guess from a production side, I mean, I got into producing really late, but it was, I can imagine again going back into that sort of 80s era, and especially being in Northern Ireland as well, that it's the rebel music, isn't it, that kind of resonates quite a lot. And I guess I have a gift, so record wise, so this I think is one of the best bass lines and one of the best horn lines ever. So there's a defunct old classic Jamaican label called Joe Moore, and there's a guy called Billy Joe Morgan, and I know you collect sevens, and we're going to go into this reggae side of it now, but this is unbelievable. So I'm going to give this to you, and I hope you love it, man. But it's sick. I think I'll give it to you now.
Many thanks.
But
Thank you.
I will. It's so good, and I think do you like put in what? Okay, let me rephrase that. What do you extract from reggae and dub in terms of an influence for your tracks? Because I know you've sampled like Mr. Majestic and there's been Horace Andy samples. I mean, what do you extract from reggae and dancehall?
So I think, I mean, I like to write from a melancholic position, which is sort of rare in with dance music, because everything has to be directed in the hyperbolic sort of phase, you know, so it's always up. So with reggae, it has this thing where it brings in this like very bluesy, like straight from the heart, but yet there it is in the dance floor, and this fascinates me. So trying to write soul music and things that in a way would have appeared in indie music or in soul music, this is the thing I try to do with drum and bass, is I'm trying to make stuff that appeals to the bluesier side of life, and that's my experience. That's how I feel about it. And I can also make music that's very frivolous as well, and I also enjoy doing that. But the thing that I love most is being able to pluck the strings, you know. And I think reggae does that, and it's in a very unique, special way that other music doesn't get to. And it's got this sort of godlike quality, can I say that, where I feel like some real spiritual thing going on. Even though I'm not religious, I feel like some music has this sort of spirituality, and it's like the honesty of somebody's soul, the struggle that they've had, and this really appeals to me because everybody knows about these things. So I sort of dwell on that with my production, and I've always felt maybe there's something obtuse about it, but I sort of like that. I like being able to get people in the dance and go, hey, no, I'm not trying to send you crazy here. I'm just trying to let you feel something, you know. Some people don't want that, but I've persevered with it, and I think that's one of the things I love most about reggae is that sort of spiritual memory in the music, you know.
So if I, as a producer, if I was to say, right, you can pick any studio and you can pick a reggae artist, and you can also pick maybe someone, you know, a King Tubby or a scientist, or someone that's also an amazing engineer. If you could have your dream setup to do a collaboration with someone from that world of sound system, who do you reckon it'd be? Well, that's quite a difficult question, but yeah.
I would work with a whole bunch of them, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many of the vocalists like Johnny Clark or Sugar or Barrington, Levy, you know, there's so many of them that I would love to work with. Scientist and Junjo. Obviously, there's people that North Parade as well. Like all this, there's so many, man. Like I couldn't give you one really, to be honest. Maybe Jammy.
Jammy's good. Have you ever been to Jamaica? Have you ever been out?
No, I would love to go to Jamaica. But yeah, and Mark Ernest just asked me this question. When was the first? What was the first Jammy's tune you remember? And I couldn't tell him. But his stuff is very, again, it's got its own. It's got its own energy. It's got its own thing, man. I just love this. It's such a rich tapestry.
I mean, Slang Tang was. For me, that's one of my favourite rhythms. I mean, I remember seeing Wayne Smith, and he was looking for the right rhythm, and before he did, you know, way in my brain, all that kind of stuff, and he went down, he recorded it, and he hated it, and Jammy was like, this is terrible, and they all sort of left the studio for the night, and there was a clash the next day. I think it was Jammy and I can't remember who it was now, someone down the road, and people were like trying to get in Wayne's house and wake him up. It's like, you need to come now, and he was like, what? And I remember going down the road, and they were just rinsing this length. It just hit, and I think that for me, that's one of my favourite Jammy rhythms of all time. I know it's a bit of a bait one, but yeah, it's unbelievable. But you know what it's like? People always say in Jamaica, like, you go and you get into a studio, and then everyone just starts ringing round, and everyone. I mean, that'd be your dream, right? If everyone started popping in, and you're like, well, I've got so much stuff to do. That'd be ideal, right?
Yeah, I'd like to have a go at that. Yeah, that's something to think about right there. I mean, again, it's something for me that sound, I think, is sort of it's gone, and it's hard to get that type of sound again, you know. And I think there's quite a few modern reggae artists, but I think that golden age is something untouchable, you know. So it's hard. I would feel fairly intimidated by doing that, you know. Such as the way I see their music and how they contribute to everything, you know. So yeah, I'd love to do that.
Did you ever get into dancehall? Did that hit? Because
I like everything, man. From calypso all the way through to digi and dancehall. I collect it all.
I mean, it's like Supercat for me. He's the one. Supercat, the way that he just can hit rhythms and just like he's amazing. Do you in terms of your own production, then, I mean, in terms of like, you know, the classic, what's next kind of question? You've got so many tunes. You've obviously you'll be playing at the time of recording this, because it's not live. You'll be playing in London with Joy Orbison tomorrow for Heavyweight. So well done them, by the way. They've just won best event, the DJ Mag Awards. So well done to them guys. I mean, what's 2024 looking like for yourself?
Well, I got to go to New Zealand and Australia right at the start. So I have to get that out of the way first. But after that, I'm going to be... got the club in Vipatal, open ground, which hopefully next year will be dedicating some time to, and playing there in different guises, I think. They're going to allow me to play across the board. And we will also have some residencies next year. And yeah, just generally trying to tend to the festivals that are coming through, and trying to keep myself busy but not too busy, because obviously I've been travelling for 25 years, and yeah, you have to
takes out of you.
Yeah, it does. And I have to actually, you know, keep myself physically fit and mentally fit for the job these days, you know. So I don't like to think about it too much. So when people ask me that, I'm like, I've blanked it all out. But yeah, I'm going to be busy next year too. And
is there? I mean, I know you did the AV show in London, which just was like, it looked fun. We couldn't be there, but it looked phenomenal. I mean, is that something? I mean, I've kind of seen with like drum sheds and larger venues, like more and more people are doing AV shows and more kind of creative things. I know Bicep's really good at it. I mean, is that something else that you kind of want to explore a little bit more, because that was really successful?
Yeah, that was work that I did with Melissa Santa Maria, and her work's, it's really easy to fit it in there. You know, it works fantastic. So I'm hoping that we can integrate some of my art for next year. That's what we're working on, so that we can have a little bit more of a personal connection when we do the visuals. Because I mean, I'm quite happy still with an abstract type of accompaniment, but being an artist, it seems like I'm missing a little bit of a trick not to look into it a bit further. So that's something again for next year we'll be doing. And when you've got a light show as well, it means you can play different type of music. You can even play ambient music and 120, go down to 120 BPMs, and I don't get to do that too often. So whenever I've got the visual thing, it gives me a good excuse to explore the range a bit, you know.
Amazing. Well, look, I massively appreciate you coming in. We're going to play some of your music, because I love it. And I just want to say thanks you so much for coming and having a chat with us, man.
My pleasure, Liam.
And I'm going to play this one as well, just because you've mentioned them, and Terry Hall is a legend.
Yeah.
There we go. Right, thanks,
Rest
man.
in peace, Terry.